So I want to take you all on a journey with me this morning. A journey that brings us across the ocean back some 2,000-3,000 years in the past. A journey that lands us in the center of Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, on the morning of Yom Kippur, the holiest day on the Jewish calendar. A journey that takes us back to a world to which we owe our Jewish roots, our rituals, and our tradition. Upon landing in ancient Jerusalem on Yom Kippur, we're immediately rushed with a mix of emotions. Looking around us, the thousands of pilgrims entering the city through its many gates culminates, in many of us, a feeling of togetherness, centeredness, and the utter import of the day. We might be surprised at the excitement, joy, even a little bit of laughter throughout the city on what many of us believe to be a somber and serious day. Finally, there's some part of us that's filled with unease as we hear people discussing and debating the intricate details of the animal sacrifices that are going to be brought throughout the day's service. But we continue going, we continue walking. We go and we follow the crowds up towards the center of the city, and we begin up the short but steep walk up to the Temple Mount. And there we see it, rising far higher than anything in its vicinity, the Beit HaMikdash, the Jerusalem temple. And we've seemingly entered into a completely different realm. The singing of the Levites, the Levine, the vestments, the clothing of the Kohanim, the priests, and the fact that somehow, some way, by some miracle, the tens of thousands of people who are clogging the streets of Jerusalem are all able to fit perfectly in this courtyard with seemingly infinite room to spare. Then silence. We turn to the corner and we watch as an elderly man known as the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, suddenly appears from deep within the temple. Behind him, 2 young goats are led, their footsteps audible as the courtyard remains completely silent. A quick glimpse of the 16th chapter of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, we learn what happens next. As we watch the high priest, he takes these 2 goats that were purchased from funds from the community just days before Yom Kippur, and reaches into his pocket, taking out a single set of lots. Now, in a ritual unlike anything else we do in Judaism, these lots are cast. They're thrown to the ground, the tension palpable in the air. As these lots fall to the ground, the crowd jockeys and jostles to try to get the first look. A short burst of murmuring, followed by another round of complete silence. As a result of these lots, 1 goat would immediately on the spot be offered up as a sacrifice to God. In the minds of our ancestors and in our ancient tradition, truly living out the highest possible purpose for such a being. The second goat, however, would come to introduce a new word into the English language. This goat, the scapegoat as it was termed, would have immediately transferred onto it all of the sins of the Jewish people and would subsequently be led out the back entrance of the temple, sent to the desert to wander the wilderness for the rest of its days. As we stand there together in the temple courtyard on this Yom Kippur morning, we see 2 goats. 1 goat living out its highest purpose and potential, the other goat sentenced to wander the desert aimlessly, the weight of sin bearing it down. The rabbis in their discussion about these goats tell us that they need to be identical. These goats should be the same height, they should be the same weight, the same size, their fur should be the same color, and ideally one shouldn't actually be able to tell them apart by any measurable metric. These 2 Yom Kippur goats, the central rite in the ancient Yom Kippur service, the rabbis conclude, would ideally be a set of identical twins. So as we're sitting there on Yom Kippur morning in the ancient temple, a question arises. Think about it for a moment. How can these 2 identical goats have such disparate ends? These 2 goats are, by any measurable factor, the exact same. How can 1 goat reach its fullest potential while the other must spend its days wandering aimlessly with no clear purpose? Biblical commentators throughout the ages have made a fascinating connection between these 2 Yom Kippur goats to an earlier set of biblical twins, If we continue on our journey through the Jewish past, we go to truly the outset of our Jewish family, and we meet two young boys, Jacob and Esau. We sit and we watch them grow, and we notice something fascinating. They're almost the exact same. There's an eerie similarity between these two twin boys that we know would grow to be such different people, such different nations. We know that Jacob and Esau, his brother, were born in the same family, in the same time. They were born in the same location, and they had the exact same upbringing. Perhaps they were privy to the exact same life opportunities. Jacob truly could have turned out to be Esau, and Esau could have been Jacob, one early midrashic teaching reads. The Kabbalists decide to go a step further. Oftentimes, the early Kabbalists would shrink away from literalist readings of the Torah, opting instead for archetypes, metaphors, and other deep philosophical truths deeper within the Torah's pages. Jacob and Esau, these two brothers, a late Kabbalist text reads, while seemingly on the surface two different people, are actually two different life paths of the same individual. The subsequent narratives of Jacob and Esau, who they became in their adulthood, even the stories of their descendants. We know the people of Israel in the case of Jacob and the people of Edom in the case of Esau are two different branches of potential stemming from a singular moment in time. In the past several years, there's been much discourse throughout the scientific community about the idea of alternative realities, about the fact that, at least according to one leading view of physics, every action can quite literally create the creation of different and parallel universes, where the future plays out in drastically different ways, about the fact that each and every moment we truly are standing at the brink of decisions that not only define what we do, but who we are. That every action in the world, no matter how seemingly minor, jumpstarts a series of events, both for us and those around us. This recalls to mind the famous story of one of the early Hasidic leaders, a man named Rabbi, who on his deathbed, his students came in and found him crying, wailing uncontrollably. Reb Zusha, they tried to comfort him. You have nothing to worry about. When you go to the Beit Din Shamala, when you go into the heavenly courts, of course you're going to be let in through the gates. You are as kind as Abraham. You are as wise as Moses. Surely you will get a good verdict. Reb Zusha turned to them and said, my fear, my students, when I reach the heavenly court, is not that they'll ask me, why weren't you like Moses? But that God will ask me, why wasn't I Zusha? Why didn't I live up to my own potential? In life, we all have this inner Jacob and an inner Esau. Our actions, moment to moment, have the potential to create drastically different realities for us in the present and come the future. Our actions, moment to moment, have the power to change who we are and who we will be come tomorrow. We turn and we recenter ourselves in the Jerusalem temple. We see the warm Jerusalem sun glistening and refracting off the gold plating of the Beit HaMikdash walls. And we watch as these two lots slowly come to the ground, sealing the fate of these two sacrificial goats. Two identical goats with drastically different endings, separated by the tiniest of actions, a singular set of lots cast by the high priest. One goat to be offered up, reaching its potential, the other wandering aimlessly in the desert, perhaps always wondering what could have been. There's nothing magical about this ritual. There's nothing magical about the entire service of Yom Kippur, whether we're talking about the past or whether we're talking about Orange County in 2021. This isn't a magical service that magically changes us, or absolves the nation, absolves us of our past wrongdoings. It's not as if we believe in a God who is tricked somehow or swayed by this ritual of the scapegoat. But the nation watches this ritual. And most importantly, you're watching this ritual. You're watching these two goats, and slowly, something begins to change. Instead of two identical goats, perhaps you begin to see yourself. You begin to see how the tiniest of actions, the tipping of a single set of lots, is able to lead to drastically different endings for the same individual. You begin to notice, to realize, to deeply internalize the importance of every moment, every decision, and every action. That the smallest of choices can result in two different, completely different futures for ourselves. And there's nothing special about these lots that are used Yom Kippur morning either. And that's exactly the point. In life, it can often seem like each and every decision and moments are without larger significance. An action here, a reaction there. But our actions in real time can truly change who we are and who we're going to be tomorrow. Will we become our inner Jacob, or will we become our inner Esav? Will we be the goats who reach the goals and potentials of our dream? Or will we be tragically, metaphorically, sent out to the wilderness, burdened down by the regret of wasted potential? The entire purpose of this day, the entire purpose of Yom Kippur, is to reflect on our decisions. It's a day centered around this idea that regardless of who we are or what we've done in the past, that is, what we decide to do now, our decisions here and now, that define our future. Who do we want to be? Who do we aspire to be in the coming year? Yom Kippur is an utter rejection of the notion that life is something that simply happens to us. Yom Kippur is predicated on the idea, the empowering idea, that we have control. We have control over our decisions. We have control over our actions. We have control over our reactions. And most importantly, we have control over who we are. Every second of our lives, we're standing at a precipice. We're standing at a precipice looking out on who we want to become. On Yom Kippur, on this awesome day that the Torah refers to as Shabbat Shabbaton, the Shabbat of all Shabbats, on this wonderful moment that the Talmud refers to as the happiest, the most joyous time of year, and on this auspicious date that Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel refers to as the Grand Cathedral of Jewish time, we truly have the chance to cut through the fog that often blurs our own self-view and personal sense of control. On Yom Kippur, we affirm the centrality of small decisions, moments, and choices. For it is what we do today that decides who we will be come tomorrow. Gemar Chatima Tova.